Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and now that my obligatory informative videos are done for the day, it's time to talk about current events in the online fitness community. And OmarIsuf made a video that just kind of came through my feed as a recommended video. So I watched it, decided to cover it. So let me go ahead and put on my +5 hat of speechcraft, lovingly called my +5 hat of autism by many of you. And let's talk about what Omar had to say regarding you're not as strong as you think you are. Some of this, I feel like he's trying to talk to the younger guys, though, who are trying to write their own programs and assess things. And he tried to explain things like, look, some of these 1-rep calculators aren't accurate up at higher reps, meaning high reps. Anything more than 4 reps is high reps. In the strength world, and we're not talking about the bodybuilding world. Don't worry about the bodybuilding world. If you guys want to do extra hypertrophy work and metabolic fatigue work, that's fine. Don't get training advice from these guys. So, yeah, anything over 4 reps for purposes of that is probably higher reps, right? And 1-rep max calculators break down for that. Here's the problem with that. You still need to work off those percentages. You do need to understand how those rep maxes carry over. Those percentages are accurate. And that's where I'm going to disagree with Omar in terms of training programming as percentages. That is how you need to work off of. You don't use them as testers. That's where people are messing up. All right, let me go back and put it in a better perspective for you. You don't use your rep maxes on the extreme end to determine your 1-rep max. You use your 1-rep max to determine your rep work, right? We don't look at an 8-rep max and say, aha, since I can do this squat for 8 reps, right? I can do this amount of weight for 8 reps on the squat, so therefore this is X percentage of my max, I could max that much. That's not how you work it. What you use it for is to go over to your max and say, okay, I can squat 500 pounds. What sort of weight do I need to be using for 8 rep sets? And that's the difference. These are not bodybuilder charts. They're strength and conditioning charts. They're strength and conditioning calculations. And honestly, most strength athletes know roughly what their 1-rep max is on any big exercise, right? We know what our maxes are. We know within a very small margin what we could lift on a good day, what we can peak at. We know these things. So that's what these percentages are for. So I think that's a point that Omar should have made clear there. That's why we don't think they work that way. And that's why even he said, Johnny Candido says, no, it doesn't work like that. Yeah, because that's not how you do it. Honestly, anything more than about 3 reps really shouldn't be used to fully calculate your 1-rep max. You can use a triple and determine what your 1-rep max is, right? You can use a double. You can use rate of perceived exertion in the 1 to 3 rep range to figure out real close to what your max probably is, right? We can do that pretty effectively. You start going to medium and higher reps. No, you can't calculate your max off of that. So he is right. But again, we need to explain it from that other perspective. Those calculators are there to determine relative workload so that you can figure out what weights and things to lift at different points in your programming. That's why it exists. And it's the other thing that we need to explain to younger guys who are lifting. I feel like in a lot of ways Omar is talking to a group of guys who are writing their own programs. I don't think that's good. In other words, if you're having to explain things like that to people, you need to tell those same people, don't write your own programs. You don't have the knowledge or experience to write your own training programming. You're going to make better progress if you just use a program written for you by someone who knows what they're doing. At least your first 2 or 3 years of serious training, right? I mean, I'm going to be honest with you guys. If you have only been training hard, like under, say, a barbell squat or bench pressing hard and heavy for a year and a half, you're probably barely at the point where you need to be thinking at all for yourself in regards to your training, right? If you're at that point, you need to literally be following the exact instructions in a program written by someone who knows what they're doing, because there's no way you know what you're doing at that point. 18 months of training experience is not enough to qualify you to write your own programming to make the best progress possible. It's just not going to happen. And that's just reality. So let's come over to the points that he made talking about external factors. Well, I think what Omar needs to look at too, he was comparing his own lifts and these different guys at different gyms and in a different environment of how the psychological factors matter. But he also needs to factor in that he wasn't doing apples to apples lifts. In other words, if you want to know what your strength is on a lift, it needs to be an exact execution of the same lift. We can all get more or less reps if we adjust our form and technique and cadence and things. The problem is that his bench press wasn't a consistent bench press. Like, let me put it this way. As a strength athlete, as a power lifter, I would not call anything that he demonstrated in that video a bench press. Just like there was no bench pressing actually done with the rep challenges with those guys. None of those would count as a bench press. So therefore, you couldn't use anything that they did to extrapolate performance to a meet legal bench, right? In other words, your box squat may not tell you how much you can squat on a back squat. Right? What you can do for 5 reps on a box squat may not be able to give you an exact calculation of your 1 rep max on a back squat because it's a different lift. That's a different exercise. And people need to understand that there's a reason in all strength sports you standardize techniques so that everyone has to do the same lift. Those were all bouncing benches. Nothing was locked out. So Omar's actual reps looked different. Like if you took those different clips that he slid in, well, this day I got 4 reps, this day I got 3 reps, this day I got 5 reps, whatever. They didn't look like the same exercise. The amount of bounce, the amount of touch and go being used off the chest was different. The amount of locking out rep to rep was different. That's going to affect the number of reps you can do, right? Does that mean you're necessarily stronger? You don't know. Maybe he was at exactly the same strength physically all those days. But his different rep cadence and the amount of inertia he used bouncing off the chest, maybe the amount of lockout inches that he skipped on each rep, changed it enough so that on one day he got 2 more reps than another at the exact same strength level. He was inconsistent, just like because they did a rep challenge that was inconsistent. No rules in place. They just bounce and get it up however you can, asses off the bench, no locking out. Well, there's no way to determine strength because you haven't standardized your lifts. And if you're not standardizing your lifts that you're measuring, then even counting reps is a waste of time, right? Let's just be honest here. The only thing that matters is rate of perceived exertion when you're being inconsistent in your tracking. In other words, if you're tracking one exercise and bouncing the bench harder off your chest versus a soft touch and go versus a pause are 3 completely different exercises, right? You can't compare your performance on those and say that you've improved or not. And that's one of the things I would say, and that's one of the criticisms I'd make of Omar right there using that as an example. He didn't do the same exercise. He didn't execute the same lift. Doing rep work with 315 of skipping 2 inches from the lockout versus a soft lockout versus a hard lockout is 3 completely different exercises. You can't compare your performance from one to the other. So that's a big problem too with some of the comparisons he highlighted. He's being completely inconsistent in his lifts. Well, that's no way to track your progress. You can only track your progress in terms of training volumes, training loads, number of reps of the weight on the bar. You can only track that accurately if you're performing the same exercise. Those are different exercises. They don't allow for consistent tracking. And that's a problem from a programming perspective, and a good coach would have lit his ass up for that. So let's come over to the last point he made about external factors. I agree with this. Boris Shako's right. And that's a big difference with a lot of younger guys with no responsibilities. That's a good point he made, that all they have to worry about sometimes is going to school and if they're going to get their dick sucked on Friday night, and they can make great progress. When you got bills, responsibilities, taxes, that matters. I mean, that's something I talk to people. There were times in my life when my training regressed, and it's just like I had external factors in my life, and I'm not going to get into all of those. Yeah, when we have external factors that make it difficult to recover, to stress, to train the way that you want, your progress stalls. Now I'm at the point to where everyone's watching my progress just accelerate again, and everyone's like, oh, you're blasting gear. No, I've just got my lifestyle under control, right? You get out of those toxic relationships. That's one thing I'll tell you right now. If you guys want to make gains in the gym, don't put your dick in crazy. Don't date girls who party. Don't date girls who even smoke weed. You need to cut all that stupid shit out of your life. You're going to have to only date girls who are stable enough they're not going to interfere with your life. If you have friends and family who bring drama or bullshit into your life that interferes with your training and your recovery, cut them out. Block them. Doesn't matter if it's your family member. That's when you have to decide, or is your training goals as an athlete more important than that toxic relationship? Because toxic relationships And it doesn't just mean romantic, but friends, family, the friends that people you're in relationships with, that they bring into your life. That can affect your training and recovery. Your taxes affect your training and recovery. Finances can affect your training and recovery. Right? So those are variables that you have to learn to control. And a good athlete, and as Boroshenko did, and that's what they always did in those countries or in Russia and everything, that's one reason they do produce good athletes. A lot of those coaches historically cut those variables out of their athlete's life. They don't allow for it. And they don't allow their athletes to get bothered by those things. You can't get involved emotionally with people who are going to bring extra stress into your life that's unnecessary if you're going to be a serious athlete, right? Because those things do affect it. But he is right. That is one reason younger guys who are just going to school don't have bills to pay. They don't have responsibilities. That does make training and results easier. And for older guys, particularly, again, you guys who are over 30, stress management. Stress management is actually probably the single most important thing you can do, because it will affect the amount of training volume that you can recover from. Right? That's critical. Stress management's critical. It's everything. And so that is a valid point that he raised. Even though that seems almost like it's not related to his main topic, it was a good point. And it's something I like to talk about a lot here. All right, guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.